Hey guys, quick heads up before I start the video. The link down below takes you to my Patreon, where you can download the project files for this video. Also gain access to my premium tutorials and in-depth courses where we build games together from start to finish. Check out my Patreon below, gain direct access to years of experience so that you can start working on your dream game tomorrow. Hello guys and welcome back to a new episode of my multiplayer Bean Battle Royale tutorial series. In the last episode, we worked on actually being able to swap weapons. So now we can pick up weapons and then one weapon will go in the back slot. The other one will go in our active slot. We can then press 1 and 2 to swap the actual weapons. We can also drop them at the location, then swap to the other one that we have and pick them up. And in this episode, we're going to be working on the actual shooting functionality of our guns. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to open up our game modes folder, core, and then core character. Now we're also going to open up our actors folder, weapons, and then our core weapon, our assault rifle, and our pistol. So as we saw in the last video, if we take a look here inside of our core weapon, we saw that we basically had these two events. So we had an event on primary action, and then here we had a handler for the primary action, and then we also had a reloading event, and then a handler for the reloading. So how did that work again? If we take a look inside of our core character here, then we can scroll up and find our input actions. So we got an input action for primary action, which is our left click of the mouse, and then we have an input action for reloading, which is our R on our keyboard. But then when it comes to games, and especially when it comes to assault rifles in games, they can also hold down your mouse button and then basically keep shooting. So what we're going to do is that we're also going to handle the release. So if somebody presses it, then they basically hold it, they can keep shooting an automatic weapon, and when they release, it needs to stop shooting. So what we're going to do is that this event dispatcher here called primary action, we're going to right click it and rename it to primary action underscore pressed. And then we're going to make a new one and call it on primary action underscore released. And then the released, we're going to drag it in here, hit call, hook this up and hit compile and save. And there we go. Then we can close out our character. Then we can head over to our core weapon and also set up that binding. So if we put this a little bit to the right here, then we're going to get our core character again and then type in bind on primary action and then the released here. So this one, then we're going to hook this up, make it all look a bit nicer. So here we go. Then we're going to drag out of here and create an event. Now this event, we're going to call it primary action underscore released. Put that here. This event here, we're going to rename it. So if you right click, rename, then this is primary action pressed. There we go. And then we see these events here so that we can use these events in our child classes, but also here. So we're going to make a new one here as well. So custom event handle primary action, and then this is then the pressed. And then this one, we're going to rename it to primary action. Oh, sorry, so I did that wrong. So this one is going to be primary action and then released. And then this one here is going to be primary action underscore pressed. And there we go. And then this one, we're going to hook it up to primary action released. Here we go. So now we have a pressed event, a released event, and then our reloading event, and that's all good. And then brings us these events over here, which we can then also see inside of our child classes. So as we saw in the last time, inside of our core weapon, we defined a bunch of variables. And then basically inside of our child classes, we then had these events over here so that we could actually handle the shooting in the individual classes. So what does that mean? Well, basically what that means is if we then have a primary action, then we can make the assault rifle here handle it differently than how we can have our pistol over here handle it. But then what I do want to say about this setup is that this is a good setup, of course, because you need to be working in a modular way so that you don't have to recode a bunch of stuff. So in our engine, you can do that in two ways. You can either basically use inheritance. So that means you make some kind of a core, or also called a base class. And then you make children classes that inherit logic from the base class so that you can reuse the logic and then simply inside of the children classes. You can then handle logic differently. You can then set up the basic parameters in a different way. But what you can also do is you can also make compositions. And what that means is that you could also do this type of logic with components, which is essentially the same. So in a component, you just encapsulate a bunch of logic, and then you can just attach these components to actors. And that way you can also easily reuse your logic. But what we're going here for is the inheritance-based setup. So we're going to have here a core class, and then the core class has functionality that both these guys can use. Now, in the case that you obviously have to start to have some kind of weapon like a grenade, or perhaps weapons such as swords or knives, then you would basically need to have either a different core class, or you would need to make like another division where you would have a core class for a knife or melee weapon, a core class for a gun weapon, etc. So however you design your game, however you kind of architect it, that's up to you and up to what fits your custom game best. But what I'm going to do here is, since we can conclude that both the assault rifle and the pistol have a lot in common, I'm going to code most of my logic, I think actually all logic regarding the shooting, inside of this core weapon, which does not really make it my core weapon anymore. It basically makes it more my core gun. But since in this tutorial series we're so far not working on anything like knives, I'm just going to keep the name the same, core weapon. But what this really is kind of my core gun. So inside of this guy, we're basically going to code a lot of our functionality. Now, on the last episode, I also had a couple of you guys ask me some questions in the DMs on Discord about why I set all of this data up inside of this core class and not simply inside of the data table for the ID of the item. And that's a very good question. So if we take a look here at setup, so this function that we made, then we see here that when we set this actor up, which the character calls when it equips it, then we see that we get the ID, read it here inside of the data table. Our data table contains all this type of data, and then we set this actor up here with the static mesh. So yes, indeed, the static mesh here is an exception that we do get from the data table. We could also simply put that in here, and then inside of our child classes, we could also simply here set up our static meshes so that we can just assign it here. Or you could indeed also just put all data inside of a data table so that you can all manage it there, so that you simply have one ID for a weapon inside of a pickup item data table like this. And then here you could simply say what the fire rate is, what the damage is of the weapon, etc, etc. But then what you do have to keep in mind is that data table data cannot be changed in runtime. So if we are to program our weapons here, then we're kind of hard coding the weapons. And for that purpose, in this case with these parameters here, I have set it up over here inside of this blueprint actually. So basically, why would this be more useful in this case? Or well, not more useful necessarily, but more flexible. Well, for instance, think about when players start to pick up things like quick reload. Then you might want to have this reload duration go down. Think about if they pick up some kind of a perk for increasing ammo. Then you might dynamically want to change the ammo of your assault rifle, or you want to up the ammo of your pistol. If you want to change the firing rate, if you go into berserk mode, for example, then in that case, it might be handy to have some of these variables actually here ready for you to code and to change. So that is, it all comes down. So all of this yet again comes down to however you like to architect and design your game, of course. So for those of you that have a very solid plan about their game and they know that it can just be all a certain way, you could nicely put everything inside of a data table and be done with it. So that's all up to you, but I just wanted to explain you guys so you understand what the difference there is and how we can do this. But like I said here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to code all of the shooting logic actually inside of the core weapon here. So both the pressing, the release and the reloading is all going to be handled there. So what that means is that we can pretty much just delete all of this logic over here. So we can just delete it here in the assault rifle, and also in the pistol, we can pretty much just delete everything over here. Now, first of all, we're going to make a couple of extra variables here inside of our core weapon class. So the first one is going to be our shooting range. So if we call this shooting range, then that is basically how far we can shoot. So that should be a float. And then we're going to say reloading question mark. That should be a Boolean. And then for the ammo, I made that a float last time, but ammo is not really in decimals in my example here. So we're going to change this to be an integer, and the max ammo is also going to be an integer. Then we hit compile and save. There we go. Then we're going to go inside of our assault rifle, click on class defaults and set up the new settings for us. So for the assault rifle, I want the damage actually to be 15. I want the fire rate to be 0.1. I want my shooting range to be 20,000 so that we can have a pretty nice range of shooting. Then we hit compile save. And then for my pistol over here, let's say that we put the damage here to 20 so that, well, yeah, got less ammo, of course. So then we're going to give you the advantage of doing a bit more damage. But then the firing rate is obviously lower, so we're going to put that to 0.2. And also let's make sure that the shooting range is lower, so we're going to put this to something like 10,000. Hit compile, save, and there we go. And then we can close out the assault rifle and the pistol. And then we can start handling these events. So if I just spread everything out a little bit. And first of all, we're going to take a look here at our primary action pressed. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a custom event and we're going to call it SR primary action. So SR stands for server. We're going to run this event on the server and we're going to make it reliable. And then we're basically going to add a little pin here and we're going to make this pin say pressed question mark. And there we go. Then we're going to hold B and left click, branch off of here. And that's the event that we're going to be using for actually handling the shooting. And then this one over here can go up here. So we're going to call this one SR primary action. So whenever we do the pressed, it needs to be pressed. We're going to copy paste. Whenever we release, it needs to not be pressed. And then over here, we can basically handle us shooting and us not shooting. So whenever we're shooting, we basically, like I said, they are automatic weapons is what we're going to say. So we're just going to use the fire rate. And then we're going to set a timer by event based on our shooting rate so that we can basically keep shooting whenever we hold our mouse button. So what does something like that look like? Well, we're going to drag out of here and type in set timer by event. Then we get this one. And then for the time here, that's going to be our rate of fire. So if you grab our rate of fire, that's going to go in here. Now we want this to be a looping event. And then we also see initial start delay. So basically, if we now run this event, then it's going to take us whatever the fire rate is. So we set that to 0.1 for the assault rifle. So it's going to set us to 0.1 before we actually do the first shot. So if we get our event out of here and do add event here, and I call this shooting, then it will currently take us 0.1 seconds to do the first shot. So to fix that, we need to do some logic here that we're going to times it times -1. So then out of here comes 0.1 second, and then here we do 0.1 times -1, which makes -0.1, and then we're going to put that in here to basically make up for that initial delay, because the first time that you click, you instantly want to shoot, basically. Then out of here comes our timer handler, so we're going to drag off here, hit promote, and then we're going to call it time handler, so TH shooting. And then put this up here. So now this event here keeps running whatever the rate of fire is. And then when we release it, we want to stop this timer by event. So then we're going to drag this in and then we're going to drag off and type in clear and invalidate timer by handle. This one goes here. Hit compile, save. There we go. Then I'm going to rewire this cable. So if we just double click the cable, we can then rewire it a little bit so that everything looks a bit better and more organized. Okay, so when we start shooting, then first of all, we need to know if we can shoot. So obviously we got ammo and we just need to know, do we actually have enough ammo to shoot? So what I'm going to do is, and there might also be some other parameters that we need to take into account. So in your game, you might be swimming, you might be damaged, etc., etc. But in this example here, we're just going to take a look at, do we have enough ammo and are we not currently reloading? So I'm going to make ourselves a little macro here, and then we're going to call it can shoot question mark. Now the way to check if we can shoot is if we drag in our ammo, drag out of here and type in less or equal than 0. So if this is not true, then we can shoot. So we drag out of here, type in not, and then scroll up, and then we see not Boolean. Put this up here. But also, like I said, we also should not be reloading. So reloading, also we're going to say not reloading. There we go. So if this one and this one are both not true, then we can basically shoot. So we're going to hold B, left click, get a branch. hook this up here, hook this up here, and this one up here. Now the reason I'm doing this inside of a macro and not a function is because in the graph, as you will see right now, when we drag this in, it will look very clean. And then we have 2 easy pins so that we can handle this one and easily handle this one. So if we can shoot, then the first thing that we want to do is we want to basically subtract ammo. So out of here, we're going to type in a minus, and then we're going to say decrement int. And this one, we hook it up here. And that basically subtracts 1, and it also immediately sets it. Then next up, we want to have, well, some cosmetic events. So when we shoot, we want to hear some sound. We want to show some recoil animation on the gun, for example. And yeah, perhaps even more. So now we want to handle cosmetic sounds. So we're going to do custom event MC, which stands for multicast underscore shoot. And then this event, we're going to make it a multicast event, reliable, so that it happens on the server and on all clients. That one we're going to call first over here. Straighten this out. So what is the cosmetic event that we want to do here? Well, first of all, we want to spawn a sound, which we want to attach to the gun. So we're going to spawn sound attached. The attached component is going to be our static mesh, which is our gun. And then for the sound effect, we previously made this shooting sound effect. So that variable goes in here, hit compile and save. And then we might want a little animation, but before we do any of that, let's take a look at what we have so far. So if we do one player standalone, hit play, then we're going to find ourselves an AK. So here we go, an AK, we can then shoot. Now, if you guys had an infinite loop error, I had that too, and it bugged out my whole project. That happens sometimes when working with these bindings. So what I did is that I removed these events, removed all the bindings, set it all up again from scratch. So basically dragged out a new clean event here. And then that basically fixed my infinite loop binding bug. It does not have to do with this logic over here, because there's nothing wrong. It just has to do with these bindings bugging out sometimes. So now we hit play. We can go ahead and test it. There we go, assault rifle. We can shoot. And then we hear the sound. And then if we pick up a pistol, so there we go, a pistol. Then we hear that sounds different. And we can also hear the firing rate already. So we can hear the pistol. And then the AK. Pistol, AK. Then next up, I think it would be cool if we animate our weapon a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. So on the multicast here, we're going to make a timeline. And then let's call it something like TL, which stands for timeline underscore, let's call it animate weapon. We're going to hook this up to play from the start. We're going to open the timeline up. Let's put this something like, let's put the length to something like 0.2, because it needs to be very quick. And then we're going to add a float track. Now this one we can call it recoil. And then we want to add another float track, and this one let's call it location. So the recoil is actually going to like rotate the gun a little bit, and then our location is going to shoot it back a little bit. I think that would look cool. So if we hold shift and left click on the line here, we get these keys. So first of all, this key needs to be 0. This key needs to be at 0.1, and this key at the end, so 0.2. Similar over here, shift, left click, 0, 0.1, and 0.2. And then for the rotation here, so let's do the value of 5. And then for this one, we want to move it back. So let's do something like -10. We click these little marks here. Then we can select here the rotation, right click, put it to auto to make it look a bit more natural. Then we're going to do the same here, right click, auto. There we go. Let's compile, save. Then we're going to get our static mesh into the graph. And then we're going to drag out of it and type in set relative rotation. We're going to hook it up to the update. We're going to right click it, split the structure, and then the recoils, that's our rotation, goes into the X for the roll. And then we're also going to drag off of here and type in set location. And then the relative location is what we want to set. This one, we hook it up here. And then split this structure as well. And this one, we're going to put it in the Y. So whatever you put that rotation and location in might differ a little bit on how you exported your weapon in Blender. So some people might have to move it on the other axes basically, but you can just figure it out by pressing play and seeing what the correct axis is for you. So now if we hit play, then let's have a quick little look at what that looks like. So if we have an AK, yeah, there we go. Then Yeah, so that's, I think that looks fine. And then we have a little pistol. We see it moving back and we see it animating a little bit. Typically, you of course would not do that with something like a timeline. In most games, you basically have animations for that, right? So you got animations on your arms that handle recoil. They're different per gun, etc, etc. But you guys get the gist of it. Then next up, we need to make the actual shooting logic. So what we're going to do is we're going to shoot a line trace. So why are we shooting line traces and not projectiles? Well, for one, line traces are far more optimized than actual projectiles, because a line trace is essentially just one little line that can just run on the server and then detect what it hits, and then we can apply damage to whatever it hits. And projectiles, they are actual physical objects inside of the world that move forward using velocity, actually have collisions and all of that stuff. So when you talk about games like a Battle Royale, then what you typically see, if we take a look at Fortnite, for example, is that most guns, so the assault rifle, pistol, shotgun, all of these guns basically run off of line traces, except for something like an RPG or a sniper. So whenever you shoot a sniper in Fortnite, you would see your bullet actually dropping down over large distances. And for the rocket launchers, you obviously actually see that rocket. So why do they do projectiles there and not in most other guns? That's basically because of the optimization part there. So obviously a rocket launcher, you shoot one bullet every now and then a replicated projectile doesn't really hurt much and is easy to run. But if we're talking about 100 players all shooting projectiles out of an AR with extremely fast fire rates, then this projectile count will go up drastically, and that can cause some lagginess, especially with bigger games, bigger maps, and therefore line traces are more preferred and more optimized. And when we talk about games like Counter-Strike, for example, those games run 100% off of line traces, and they are also 100% crosshair line trace accurate. So you don't actually shoot out of the third person gun. No, you actually shoot from the center of your screen, straight line forward, and that determines whether or not you hit people. So yeah, that's the information about line traces and projectiles. Now, when we perhaps start setting up some grenades here for the project in another video, then there we will start to use actual projectile components, and then we can see what it looks like to bounce a grenade on the landscape. So now we go back inside of our core weapon, and we need to do the line trace logic. So I'm going to make a function here, and we can call it something like line trace underscore shot. And then we're going to right click and type in line trace by channel. This one is the one that we want. So here we see a couple of settings. We see a start and end, trace channel, whether or not we want to ignore certain actors, etc. So first of all, let's go ahead and do the mathematics for drawing our line trace. So we're going to get our character here. Then from our character, we're going to type in get camera, scroll all the way down and get the camera of the user, because that's where we want to start our line trace at. Then we're going to get our spring arm. That's this one. And we're going to get the target arm length of our spring arm. So what is that? If we take a look in our character, then we can click here on spring arm and then press F. So here we basically see that we have a camera with a spring arm. So first we need to compensate the line trace for this part, so that it actually starts at that location here and then shoots forward from there. So that's why we basically get our target arm length here, and the mathematics will make sense in a second. So off of the camera, we're going to type in get world location. Then get this one, we're going to drag out of here and get the forward vector. So that's wherever we are looking forward. Then here we're going to do plus. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to basically multiply the forward vector with the target arm length, so we know the direction that we're looking at. So here we're going to do multiply and then put this guy in here. Then this plus goes in here and this one goes into the start. And then for the end, we're going to get our world location again and type in plus. And then we're going to get our forward vector, and this time we're going to multiply it times the shooting range, so times how far we can shoot. So that one goes in here, and this goes in here. And keep in mind how far we can shoot. We set that up on a per weapon basis, so this one can shoot 20,000 Unreal Engine units. And then this one here is going to go in the end, Now we hit compile and save. Then we're going to test this to see what it looks like. So we're going to click here on draw debug for duration. And also what we're going to do is, since we're using the visibility trace channel to actually shoot, we're going to say that we want our self to be ignored. So here we see ignore self. Well, that goes for the actual weapon. But what we also want to ignore is our character. So if we drag in our character and then drag out of actors to ignore, then we're going to type in make. So make array, and ourselves as the character, we want to ignore that in the line trace. And then also, since we use the visibility channel here, we need to go into our character, click our capsule, and then if we scroll down, we see that our collision settings are set to pawn, which makes the visibility channel ignored. So we're going to click here on custom and set this to block, so that when our capsule here gets hit, that we can actually handle us getting shot and then dealing damage to us. Okay, so now that this is set to for duration, we're then go back into the event graph, make sure that we actually hook up the function, right? And then keep in mind, all of this only occurs on the server. So the server is the one doing all the line traces. The clients have no need of doing any of this logic. We also don't want them interfering with this logic, because we want this all to be secure and authoritative on the server. So then if we hit play, then we can go ahead and grab ourselves a gun. So here we have an assault rifle. We pick that up, we press click, and then we see this little line trace here, and this is the impact. So that's where we shot. Now we can shoot a couple of times, and then we see what we hit. So here we see that we hit kind of in the sky, but that just has to do with the rock collision, which is not very accurate, kind of goes up. But now we can just see what we start shooting. So we can shoot all across here, and then impact there on the landscape. We can shoot the crate, and then we actually rapid fire. Now that's what it looks like. And now I can't shoot anymore, because now I'm out of my 30 bullets, because we already had the logic for actually subtracting bullets. And then if we do the pistol and try out the pistol and then shoot, then we see that this one has a different fire rate. This is basically how it shoots, and it shoots less far. So that is great. Now perhaps what we want is that wherever we actually impact, we might want to spawn a cool particle there. So let's go ahead and make us an impact particle. So if we go here to assets, then we're going to make a new folder, call it Niagara. We open it up, right click, Niagara system. From this one, that's great. And then a directional burst plus finish, and call it NS Niagara system. Let's call that impact. So what does this look like? Something like this. So here you saw it very quickly. You can also see it here. So it basically just shoots out a little burst in some kind of a direction. So then back inside of our core weapon, we're going to right click and do a new custom event. And let's call it MC Multicast spawn impact. So this multicast is for spawning our impact event effects, basically. So we're going to set this to multicast reliable, and then we're going to give it 2 pins. So the first one is of the type vector, and the second one also actually. The first one we're going to call it location. The second one we're going to call it normal. And then we drag out of here, type in spawn system at location. This spawns a Niagara system, which is our impact. And then the location goes in here, and into the rotation, we're going to drag out of here and type in rotation from X vector. So then we basically have the correct impact. And then it's so if we shoot a rock at this point, it shoots in the opposite direction, an impact particle now. Make sure this is set to auto destroy. Hit compile and save. Then we're going to go back inside of our line trace, because out of here we basically get the hit for the line trace. So if we hold B and left click, then hook the branch up. So whenever we actually have a hit on the visibility channel, then out of our hit result, the first thing we want to do is, well, we want to spawn that particle. So we do MC and then spawn impact. Then the location is going to go in here and the normal in here. And then next up, we want to basically damage the actor that we hit. And that can be any actor. So either barrels can respond to this, that we can shoot barrels, players can respond to it, perhaps animals. So what we're going to do then is we're going to type in apply damage. And we get this event that we used earlier in the tutorial series as well to basically handle damage. So for the damaged actor, we're just going to say hit actor. The damage is going to be our variable that we made earlier. The event instigator, that's the controller of the guy that actually instigated. So in a previous episode, we set up our kill feed, and then the event instigator here is used to read the name of the player controller. That is the event instigator. So we're going to drag our character in here. So we're going to drag off here and type in get controller. And then we see here, get instigator controller. This guy plugs in here, and the damage causer is the gun ourselves. So here we're going to do self as the gun. Then we hook this all up like this. We can close this guy. There we go. So now if we hit compile and save, we can test that once more. So we walk up to crate here, get an assault rifle. Then we can now shoot. Then we see the impacts occurring, and we actually apply damage to whatever we shoot. So if we shoot on the floor, it just shoots up. If we shoot at the rock surface like this, it goes in the opposite direction, you can shoot the tree, etc. And then typically what you see in video games is that based on whatever you hit, so that comes out of this line trace here, you would get a physics material, and then you can determine what the class is of your physics material, and based on the class of your physics material, you will then typically spawn different types of impacts, or you would adjust your impact to have like a wood impact color or a blood color, etc. So when you guys want to go further into those types of details, then that is basically the place to do that. So now if we quickly test with 2 players, then we can check to see if we can actually damage each other. So we're gonna get our loot. So here we go, we got an AK. I can now shoot, and both the client and the server can see that I'm shooting and that we see the impact particles. Only the server sees the line traces, because keep in mind that only happens on the server. The client can also shoot. We hear the different sound, we see the impacts. So now if the client shoots the server, boom, boom, then we see that the server health goes down. Then if the server blasts down the client, then we see that we actually kill that guy. And then it says on top our little kill feed from the previous episode. Now we can shoot. But then I can run out of ammo. So now I completely ran out of ammo and can't shoot anymore. So now we need to start setting up our reloading event here basically to make our reload logic. So for reloading, yet again, this event here occurs on the local version. So here we basically just have an offline click. So first we need to get that offline click to the server again. So if we do a right click, custom event, then we're going to call this sr_reload. And then we're going to make it run on server reliable. We also here need a cosmetic event to handle sound effects. So another custom event is MC reload, which is the multicast reload. So here we do multicast reliable. So off of the offline event, we just do sr reload, and then the server will handle the rest for us. We then hit compile and save. So the first thing we need to do, just like how we checked if we can or cannot shoot, we need to check if we can or cannot reload. So if we click here and we type in can reload and make ourselves this new macro. And then how do we determine if we can reload? Well, first of all, we do not want to already currently be reloading. So off of reloading, we're going to type in not and get a not boolean. And then we want to check if our ammo is not equal to our max ammo. So basically, if we are full, if we have the maximum amount of ammo, then we do not unnecessarily want to reload. So we're going to type in is not equal. So is our ammo not equal to our max ammo? So it's going to be this one and this one. That basically makes up whether or not we can or cannot shoot. Then we hold B, branch, hook this all up. There we go. Hit compile and save. So the first thing we're going to do is drag this guy in here. And then what we're going to say is, well, if we can reload, then first of all, we're going to set reloading to true. So that means then we can't reload again, because now we entered the reloading event. Then we want to call our MC reload to handle all kinds of cosmetics, such as a reload sound effect, perhaps another animation so that you actually see that you're reloading. Then we're going to do a little delay, and the delay is going to be based off of our reload duration. So here we had our reloading duration that goes in here. Now, once we're done reloading, then we want to set our ammo to our max ammo. So we're going to hook this up just like that. So our ammo is like 0, and then it will be set to the max ammo, which might be 30. And then we're basically done reloading. So then the reloading can be set to false again. So that's basically our reloading logic. Then here we're going to handle the cosmetics. So first of all, just like we did with the shooting, we want to spawn a sound attached to our gun. So we're going to drag this in here, hook it up. Now this sound for reloading is going to be our reload sound. So that goes in here. And then we also want to play a little animation, I suppose. So let's make it so that our gun completely rotates. So we're going to right click, type in timeline, and let's call this TL timeline reload. We're going to play it from the start. And then we're going to open it up, and we're going to do a little trick here that you could also apply up here to the shooting. That might be good practice if you guys do that yourselves, so that you understand it properly. So the trick here is we're going to make the timeline 1 second, click track at float, and then this we're going to call it a rotation because we're just going to be rotating our gun. Then we're going to do two keys here. So this one goes at 0 and this one goes at 1. So, and then this one here, we want to set it to the maximum value. So let's set that to, let's say 360 degrees. And then we could select it and then basically set it to auto to make it have it a bit more natural look. So now the reloading is going to take 1 second, but what we know is that our actual reload duration is different per weapon. So some weapons take a second to reload, others perhaps 0.5 seconds. So since we made this exactly 1 second, we can just apply some basic math to basically change the rate of this animation based on our reload duration. So what we're going to do is if we click here on components, we can then find our timeline reload. So that's this guy. Then we can drag off of here and then we can type in set play rate. So there we go. And then we can hook this up to the begin play. And then the play rate, we're going to equal that to our reload duration. So our reload duration goes in here. So basically this timeline here is running 1 second, then the reload duration comes in with its, let's see, for the assault rifle, for example, with its, 1 second duration. So this will just set it to 1, which will take 1 second to reload. Then the pistol comes in with 0.5 second duration. Then it will basically set the play rate to 0.5, which makes it faster, speeds it up. And then this will basically play twice as fast so that it matches the actual reload duration. Then out of here, we're going to drag in our static mesh and type in set relative rotation. And then hook it up to the update here and put this here. We're going to right click this, split the structure, and then this one for me goes into the X. But yet again, that depends on how you export your weapon in Blender. Now, if you want to straighten lines, I just click nodes. So I hold Control, I click them both at the same time. Then press Q on your keyboard to straighten lines. And then there you go. So then we hit compile and save. Check out Cactus Center right now on Steam and Early Access. It's a very fun multiplayer video game, cheaper than the Starbucks coffee. So if you want to have a good time with your friends or strangers, click that link down below. And I appreciate every single one of you. And enjoy the rest of the video. Bye. And then we can give that all a big test. So we now have reloading. So we can put a comment around this, call it a reload. And we got everything related to shooting. And then up here, we basically got our inputs. So this is our inputs. And then hit compile and save. And there we go. We could then close out our core weapon and our assault rifle and our character actually. And then we can give this one grand test. So we can open up these loot crates and hope for some cool weapons. Okay, so there we go. So we got an assault rifle here. We can then shoot until we're out of ammo. So there we go. If I then press reload, then we can see both the server and the client reloading the gun. Then I can shoot again. And then during the reloading event, so if I press R, then I can't shoot or press reload again. Now if I got full bullets, I also can press reload. So that's great. You can then pick up a pistol, shoot with the pistol, reload. You hear the different reloading sound. Now obviously also when it comes to sounds, you need to make sure that you match your sound to your reloading animation, of course. So then we got the server to pick up a pistol and an assault rifle. Then the server can shoot, server can reload, server can take its AK, shoot, and then the server can reload as well. Server can shoot the client and kill the client. Boom, there we go. So then the client dies, and then we see that clients die. So everything works fine. Then we want to turn off our line traces again. So if we go back here inside of our actors, weapons, core weapon, and then go into our line trace function, then we want to set the debugging to none again. Hit compile, save, and there we go. So if you guys wanted to have some new weapons, well, first of all, then you need to go into your data table in this case. Then we add a new weapon with a new static mesh here. And then inside of our weapons folder, you would simply duplicate. You would call this something like, I don't know, let's call it minigun. So this is a minigun. Then you would just assign the ID of the looks. So if we want this to be the pistol, it would be 2. We would give it a shitload of ammo. So let's say 300, 300. And the firing rate, let's make it extremely fast. So 0.05. And let's have it deal 10 damage per shot. And then the range, let's make it 15,000, for example. Compile, save. Then head over to your data table. Let's then hit plus. Make a new row here, so 4, and then the ID is 4. The name is minigun. Actually, here we want to then use some. Let's make it. Let's see. We will just make it this static mesh flag. Not sure what this is. The spawn percentage. Let's make it 95, and then the blueprint is the minigun. There we go. So we actually gave an ID of 4. So back inside of the minigun weapon here, we're actually going to give it the proper ID. So the ID of 4, hit compile, save, and that's how we now made a new weapon. So if we then walk up to our loot crates, then, okay, so this yellow thing is our minigun apparently, and then we press E. So now we're holding a minigun. It obviously looks horrible, but that just depends on what type of model you make for it. And this guy can then shoot extremely rapid and has 300 ammo. So here we go. She got a minigun. I'll drop it. I'll have the client have a go with it. So here we go. And then you have your typical voice line. Say hello to my little friend. So then we hit reload. The minigun can reload. And that's how easy you can now set up new weapons. Now I do want to mention that we have some flawed logic now in the system. So if we pick up an AK and then a pistol as well and then start shooting. So let's make sure that it goes all the way out of ammo. Then if I now swap to my pistol, back to my AK, it just has all the ammo again. So what I can do is I can just shoot, swap, shoot, swap, shoot. So that is basically a bug right now that has to do with how we set up the weapons. So if we take a quick look at that. Then we go into our game mode score and then character. And then what we see here is that while both when switching the weapon and when we pick them up. So then if we open this up or when we switch weapons, then we see that it calls this function called update weapons. And inside of this function, we then get the ID of the incoming weapon. And then basically this active weapon class, we set that up with a new blueprint. So since we set that up with a new blueprint, then basically this new core class comes in with fresh ammo. So that's something that we will work on in the next video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and then I'll see you guys in the next one.